We're going to play an exciting style of football. That's all I know. Fast pace, tempo on offense, explosive. We're going to be very aggressive on defense. For me, just being a great football player, that's just one of the boxes that need to be checked.
Oh my God, like USF, like bring the goal, like bring the goal, like.
It starts with the person who they are. I'm looking for a great young man that has character and integrity that's going to represent this university and this football program the right way.
Play for each other. We brought it out here. That's the only thing we got out here. 1, 2, 3.
Do they love football? It's hard to be a great football player if you don't love it. Do they have a passion every day to be great in what they do? At the end of the day, we're going to have fun doing it. There's players out there that want to be a part of that. It's going to be special to have an opportunity to recruit them to such a special place. The sky is the limit. There's no doubt that there's been some great moments already in a young program. But the potential that this program has is something that really draws me down here.
I don't think many people in this stadium know what is about to happen, but exciting times here for South Florida.
We have the potential to be a championship program, and there really is no telling where we could be 5 years from now. And that's one of the things that most excites me about this job and this opportunity.
Hey look, Michael Kelly could have gone a lot of different routes with this USF hire, and he made absolutely the best choice. With Jeff Scott, you get somebody with a great pedigree. Everything he's done at Clemson, he will bring to USF. A version of Clemson will now be on Fowler Avenue. Since Jeff took over as co-offensive coordinator at Clemson, 5 consecutive college football playoffs, 2 national titles, possibly a 3rd Monday night here in New Orleans. I'm very excited as a Tampa resident to see what Jeff can do and bring USF football back to championship caliber.
Welcome back, National Signing Day 2020. 8 new Bulls this morning, 9 in December, and another new Bull joins us right now, our head coach, Jeff Scott. Coach, thanks a lot. This has been a whirlwind, but an impressive class has come together.
Yeah, it's an exciting day today. You know, I think the first signing in December, that happened really fast, and we're excited about that group of young men that became Bulls on that day. A few of them were able to enroll early in January. They're already here going through our strength and conditioning program, and then the 8 young men that joined us today we're awfully excited about. And you know, I'm just really proud of our staff, you know, really just kind of getting everybody together in January. It was a quick recruiting season, but the type of, not just the type of players that I feel like we've added to our team, but the type of young men, the type of families. You know, for me, big picture wise, coming into the program, really wanting to kind of create our identity with the right type of culture. You know, one of the quickest ways to maybe change your culture and get it to exactly where you want as a head coach and coaching staff is the people that you bring into the culture and the work ethic that they have, the character, integrity, the foundation that they have maybe from their high schools or their family background, all those type of things. So that's probably what I'm most excited about with this class. Yes, there's some talented guys in this class, some that I think may have an opportunity to help us next year. And there's definitely a good group of young men that I think have the potential to help us down the road. Time will tell on that, but bottom line, the type of young men that we've added into our locker room is what I'm most excited about with this class.
Coach, how soon after being named the head coach of the University of South Florida, actually getting in the building, were you able to start making some of those calls? You had guys that may have been on the borderline that you really wanted to land. How soon after that process were you able to start making those calls, hopping on the phone and get back to the recruiting trail?
It happened very fast. I can remember I came in on a Tuesday night in December and had the press conference on Wednesday, and then on Friday we had maybe 9 of our committed players that showed up for an official visit. So I got to meet them right here on our campus and in Tampa 2 days after being hired. So that was pretty interesting. I felt like, you know, it was speed dating for them and for myself, but really I was impressed with the young men that were already committed to the University of South Florida, and very happy that we were able to talk them into signing with us, because I think they're a talented group. And then immediately after that, I had to kind of juggle talking to coaches, recruiting coaches, hiring coaches, with also communicating with the young men that, you know, we were going to look to sign today.
Well, Bulls fans, this class is pretty much an even split in terms of numbers between offensive and defensive players. Coach, everybody wants to talk about quarterbacks. Let's start there. You needed to build some depth at that position. You have 3 quarterbacks in this class. Tell us a little bit about them.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, the biggest thing, again, just looking at needs on your team. And with, you know, Blake Barnett moving on, and some of the things going on within our roster, that was a big priority. You know, I like where our roster is. You know, adding Cade Fortin, you know, that was a interesting 48 hours of recruiting process. The first conversation I had with him was on a Friday morning before signing day, and I think the night before he was planning to commit somewhere else. And we got up to see him that Friday night, and then got an opportunity to have him and his family come down to Tampa on Sunday, which was the last day that you could be on campus in a recruiting period before signing with us on Wednesday. I just think his experience, you know, he played at North Carolina, and then, you know, his age, and also the fact that he has 3 years of eligibility is something that I'm really excited about. And then, you know, we also knew that we wanted to add at least 2 more high school quarterbacks to the mix. And Jordan Smith was a young man that from Lake City that was already committed. You know, when I watched his video, you know, I was really impressed with his athleticism, his speed, also his ability to throw the ball. You know, he's a playmaker. And so really getting to know him was great. I think his family, his father, you know, played here at the University of South Florida. Going into his living room, you know, he had Bulls stuff everywhere. Green and gold was all over his house, and I think that's important. He was someone that really wanted to play at the University of South Florida, and so I'm excited about his potential. And then Travis Marsh from Miami Central, you know, won a state championship this year, a very competitive league in a very competitive state, and he's just a winner. You know, I think his best football is ahead of him. I love his length, his athleticism, and you know, the leadership qualities that he has. Talking to the coaches there at Miami Central, I think, you know, there's 3 great guys to add to that quarterback room that I know Coach Weiss is looking forward to getting started with them.
Coach, you know, the way I look at it, you meet so many different coaches, right? Each guy has their own tool belt when it comes to recruiting. The things that make you special as a high school recruiter, were you able to roll some of those tools out and pull some tricks out? Like, you got into talking to Cade. How did you actually get him on campus within 48 hours?
I think that I've improved over time, because I'm sitting right here with one of my big misses. A lot of people don't know that I actually recruited Sam out of high school, maybe one of my first years at Clemson. And he ended up coming here to the University of South Florida. That's probably, in my mind, the first time that I said, wow, University of South Florida, they took one away from the Tigers right there. And then obviously, you know, followed his career here and in the NFL. But, you know, I think the biggest thing in recruiting is just being genuine, being who you are, being transparent. Recruiting can take a lot of twists and turns, and some things happen unexpectedly. And so I think the biggest thing that I've learned is just being yourself and developing a relationship with that young man and his family. Obviously, this situation with the timing, you know, you had to develop those relationships very quickly. It was the first time that I ever had been on the phone with a recruit and his mom, trying to get them to sign with us on the early signing period, when I had never met with them in person and they had never been to Tampa, Florida before. You know, I've never been in that situation before, but, you know, really some previous contacts and relationships around those that young man and his family helped with that. So I think at the end of the day, it comes down to being able to develop a relationship, a trust factor with them, and letting them know that you're genuine and what you say you're actually going to do. And it's not just maybe recruiting talk, like maybe out there at some other places.
Coach, there'll be a transition on the offensive line this year, in part because of graduations after last year, but also because of a new offensive scheme. Tell us a little bit about the type of offensive linemen you are looking for and the ones that you were able to sign for this class.
Yeah, and again, that's another need for us. I think currently we have 10 offensive linemen on scholarship, so we knew that we needed to add a few guys to that mix. And the biggest thing that we're looking for in offensive line, they've got to be athletic. They've got to be able to run. I think, with what we do offensively, with the outside zone, inside zone, you've got to have guys that can get to the next level. And then obviously you got to have some guys that can pass protect. We're going to throw the ball, be explosive in the passing game just like the running game. So pass protection is really important. And then also, you need guys that can be physical at the point of attack. So there's a lot of different things that you're looking for. For me, it's not just their ability that you can see on a highlight film. It's sitting down with them, having a conversation with them, kind of figuring out their football knowledge. Do they love football? Offensive line it's a difficult position, right? These guys aren't in the paper. They don't get to carry the ball. They have to be very unselfish. And, it's important to find offensive linemen that love the game of football and love what they do. And I'm just really excited about the two young men that we've added in this class. Cesar Reyes from right here, in Tampa. I knew that was going to be a huge priority for us, having the opportunity to recruit Tampa whenever I was at Clemson. I've been able to see the amount of talent that's here in this Bay Area, and for us to have the success that we're going to have here at the University of South Florida, we've got to do a great job of keeping players like Cesar at home. And that was something that was important to him, talking to him in the recruiting process. Once he decided that this was the best place for him, he took a lot of pride in being one of those top players from this area to stay home and play right here at USF. But I think Cesar's got great size. He's a physical player. He battled some injuries earlier in his high school career, but I think he's going to do a great job here. And then Uriah Green is another one of those, again, talking about athletic offensive linemen, played in a great program there at Mallard Creek in Charlotte. We had signed many players from Mallard Creek at my previous school. And Uriah's father played football at Miami, and he's also Uriah's offensive line coach there at Mallard Creek, and has had a lot of talented offensive linemen that have come through that program. But Uriah is a very athletic, instinctual football player, very smart, and a guy we're awfully happy to add to Coach Mo's room.
Coach, when you talk about actually getting those guys here on campus, it's not just an experience where they come and they meet with you and they meet with the coaches. There's a whole ecosystem surrounding the experience for these guys, whether it's current players, places you're able to take them around the city. Talk about what that was like, because I know some of those places, it was actually your first time attending those places as well. Talk about some of the key components from an experience standpoint that those guys were able to experience, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think number one is just this community. I mean, the Bay Area and having an opportunity to recruit players to Tampa, that was what was a lot of fun for me on that first official visit weekend, to be able to go out and some of the different restaurants downtown around the Bay. I looked at my dad and said, man, can you believe that we get to recruit to this? I mean, we were sitting right there at a restaurant, beautiful day, the boats were coming through. And, I think that's something for, a lot of these young men to be able to play at a place like University of South Florida and have all of this stuff in your backyard, the entertainment with all the professional teams that are here, and, all of the different businesses and companies that are right here in Tampa, for internships and potential employment. There's just so many positives of this area. So that was definitely one thing that we wanted our guys to be able to experience in maybe some of the restaurants and where we stayed on the visit. Then the next thing is to be able to see the university. We've got a beautiful campus. That was one thing that I really wanted to do when I got here, was drive around the campus. I remember many years ago when the campus did not look like it does today. And so to be able to take them over to the Marshall Center, to be able to take them into the bookstore, and just be able to see, the beautiful campus that our students get to enjoy every day. I think that was really important. And then the next thing was really to talk about our future facilities that we're going to be building here very shortly. I think there's a lot of excitement about that, and something that these recruits that are coming to join our program, they're going to be able to move into those facilities and use those here in the next few years.
You and your staff have worked the Bay Area extensively in your time here. It's about keeping kids here. It's also about welcoming kids back to the state of Florida. I think about a guy like Darian Felix, who was so far away from home at Oregon. Now he comes back to his home state, and he's going to be a big addition in the offensive backfield.
Yeah, Darian is a young man that I remember we recruited at Clemson. We offered him a scholarship, and we were really disappointed at Clemson when he chose to go to Oregon. And so I had some relationships down there in Fort Myers, and knew his coach and my dad have a very long relationship and known each other a long time. But his recruitment was probably the easiest out of all the guys. Whenever I found out that he was in the portal and looking to come back home, I got on the phone with him, and I think in the first conversation he said, "Coach, that's exactly where I want to go." I think his familiarity with me and being involved in his recruitment whenever I was at Clemson, I think made it an easy transition for him. I know there was a lot of other schools here in this area that they're calling him and after him, and he made a decision very quickly that he wanted to be here. And again, that's an explosive piece to be able to add to our current roster, and he's done a great job in the month that he's been here so far.
Coach, what do you see in a guy like Levante Camille, linebacker out of Lake City? In my experience with Lake City, you talk about a football factory. So many guys have come out of Lake City, and there's just such an enriching history behind Lake City Columbia football. What do you see in a guy like him in terms of having the opportunity to join a linebacker room that already has depth?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the thing that you notice about Levante is just his smile. I mean, he's got a great smile. He's got a great attitude. He has a great disposition. His grandparents, who he lives with, are just great people. They've really helped instill the right qualities in him as a person. So I think for the first thing that I notice is just who he is as a person and his leadership ability. And then when you turn on the video, I mean, this guy is super athletic. I think, Coach Spencer, that was one thing that he did. As soon as he got here, he was checking out the guys that we were recruiting. Actually, Levante was already committed to us at the time. And he immediately said, "Hey, I love this guy." And within, Coach Spencer's scheme with what we're going to be doing, you need those linebackers that can be multiple, can move around, can play inside, can play outside, can rush off the edge. And those guys are just so valuable with the way that offenses are playing. You've got to be able to stay multiple on your defensive side and keep the same personnel on the field. So he's a guy that we're very excited about, that I think will bring the work ethic and coming from a program right there in Lake City, like Columbia, I think is an added benefit for us.
You got an intriguing wide receiver flip pretty late. Tell us about the process with Dollison. There had to be a point when you thought it was worth continuing to pursue, that you had a chance, and sure enough, he's coming to USF.
Yeah, he's the one I'm going to remember for a long time, because he's the player I was talking about earlier, where I'd really never met him before. I knew of him because we had recruited his quarterback at his school whenever I was at Clemson, and I'd seen him on the highlight tape, and we just filled up at wide receiver very early at Clemson last year, so that's why I really never had him come up and visit with us at Clemson. But on Friday, everything was happening really fast, but I got the job on Wednesday, had the press conference Wednesday, and on Friday I made the call to he and his high school coach, and he had already kind of made a decision of what he thought he wanted to do, and so I spent many hours on the phone with he and his mom and his grandfather over the next couple of days, trying to get them to see the opportunity that we had here at the University of South Florida. But I think ultimately, again, we talked about, recruiting goes back to relationships. My dad coached Coach Holmes, who is his head coach at Gray Academy. And so the relationship that Coach Holmes had with my father, from my dad coaching him at South Carolina many years ago, and I think that really helped the OD and his mom and his family feel comfortable with us, that he was going to be in good hands. But what I see when I watch his video is explosiveness. I think he had over 1,700 yards this year, just very fast, playmaker, very productive, and I'm excited about getting out on the field with him. This spring, he's a guy that you turn on his video, you just see him leaving guys and being able to run by guys. And, when I think about the league that we're playing in, you need playmakers, guys that can really separate, run after catch, all those type of things. And I think he's one of these guys that our fans are going to come to love here over the next couple of years.
You talk about scheme, you talk about the evolution of football, and you talk about challenging guys on defense. What is Holden Willis, the tight end that you guys have signed, 6'4", 204 pounds, seems to me that he's a very athletic player. He creates matchup issues. What have you seen from him? What are you most excited about from him as a player?
Absolutely. Holden is another one that we're just fired up about. I think, he started off his career as a wide receiver and also played on the defensive side of the ball. He's the kind of player, from Greenback, Tennessee, small town, great community, great program that he's coming out of. But, he never came off the field in high school. He was just that guy that stayed on the field every snap, played his heart out. I actually had the opportunity to meet him and coach him at our football camp at Clemson 2 years earlier. And I remember him from that, just how athletic he was. And, when you're looking for these tight ends, you're looking for these big-bodied guys that are very athletic, can be a mismatch. And, yes, he's going to need to add some weight when he gets here. But, it's easier to take an athletic guy with a big frame that can run and add weight to him appropriately than maybe somebody that's already, a little bit heavier, that maybe athletically is not exactly where you want them to be. So I think he's the guy that we're going to be able to move around, to be able to create some mismatches. But, man, that was probably one of my most exciting home visits, going up to see he and his family. I mean, he's got a great family that absolutely, loves him, and you can tell that he's made of the right stuff. His dad is just a very hard worker, very humble beginnings where he is, and just, I think that spirit, it just comes out of Holden, and he's going to be a guy that's going to be a great to add to our locker room, and a guy that I think is going to be a big-time playmaker for us here in the years to come.
17 Bulls in the class, 8 more this morning. Stay with us. We'll take a quick time out. We'll come back with more with Coach Scott, find out about his experiences taking over this program and playing for a national championship all at the same time. It's National Signing Day 2020. Back after this.
Question, of course, now, who is going to replace Charlie? Their search for a new head coach. A lot of names already floating around, too, about who could possibly replace him. The likely nationwide search that's already underway.
The Vice President of Athletics at USF, Michael Kelly, made clear USF's commitment to a championship-caliber football program.
Good morning and welcome. Welcome to a great day for all of USF. It's a moment we can all share and enjoy as we introduce our new head football coach.
Today marks a new chapter for athletics at the University of South Florida and for our football program. Coach Scott is unequivocally our first and only choice as the head football coach.
He's here to lead a program, to craft a culture of passion, of fun, of accountability, and of excellence. This young man was born to be a head football coach. He's been preparing for it his entire life. He's worked tirelessly for this opportunity. It's all about fit and timing, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to tell you that this is the right fit and the right time for Jeff Scott to be the head coach of the University of South Florida. So let's give a horns up welcome for our new head football coach, Mr. Jeff Scott.
I have a very clear vision for what I believe is going to take us to the next level as a football program, as a university, and I believe that USF needs to be united from start to finish. Great university, great location, great conference, and there's no better time than right now to start supporting this program. We just need to bring all of our energies and efforts with the mindset that the best is yet to come. There's a lot of work to do, and I'm excited to get started, and together, united, together, we will build something very special. We're getting ready to start a new decade, and I firmly believe that if we come together, we unite, that this will be the start of the best decade in the University of South Florida football history. Go Bulls!
Back, National Signing Day 2020, spending some time with Bulls head coach Jeff Scott. It has been a whirlwind, I would guess is probably the best way to put it, over the last couple of months. Let's start at the beginning, when you are still working with Clemson, fighting for a national championship, but you have taken over as the head coach of this program. It had to be demanding, it had to be difficult, but I would bet every coach on the planet would gladly have that opportunity. What was it like?
Yeah, it was, well, number one, it was a great experience, and I'm glad I had that opportunity. One thing that I'd really struggled with the last few years was really kind of thinking about when this day would come, when maybe I would have an opportunity to go be a head coach. And you know, I'm just such a loyal person and loyal coach to my players. I really struggled with the thought of leaving my players in December, not being able to finish out the season, especially when we were having a championship run, and it was not just a typical bowl game. And so, you know, I talked to Coach Sweeney right before I officially got hired here at USF, and he asked me, he said, would you like to come back and coach the bowl? And I said, Coach, I would love to. And I just need to make sure that it's okay with Michael Kelly and Dr. Corral, and they were 100% on board. And so I feel very blessed to have that opportunity to do both. And, you know, it was probably the last week after, it was really easy whenever we went out to Arizona to play Ohio State, because we were in a dead period and kind of during the Christmas break. But the next week, getting ready for LSU, you know, I had my entire staff hired. They were working here in the office. And so I actually did 2 Skype staff meetings, 2 mornings while I was still in Clemson. And I'm just very fortunate that, you know, both Coach Sweeney and Michael Kelly allowed me to kind of work through that and allow us to be able to get to a position where we're able to have the type of signing day that we're having today. And, you know, for me, it was important that I could finish with our players. Obviously, the outcome there in the national championship game was not what I wanted or maybe expected, but to have the opportunity to finish the right way with that group and really kind of put an end to a special 12-year career at Clemson was something that was very important to both Sarah and I.
I want to talk to you a little more about your experience here in Tampa, but I'd also like to know, what was it like, you know, that last week that you had the opportunity to spend with those young men, those players? I'm sure they embraced you in a pretty strong fashion when you got back, and I'm sure the goodbye, you know, I'm sure that was strong as well. How was it?
Yeah, it was special because, you know, I actually knew, you know, the difficult thing was the 2 weeks before we were playing Ohio State, I didn't know if that was going to be my last game or not all the way until the last drive. So that was probably more of a challenge. But after we beat Ohio State and I knew that the next game truly would be my last game, you know, the biggest thing I told my receivers in the offense is, you know, I don't want to be a distraction. You know, I see myself just like a senior, right? We had some seniors and some top juniors like T. Higgins that was going to be their last game. I said, I want you guys to treat me just like that. I'm going to go out with you guys. But, you know, there was some emotional times whenever you have close relationships with your players, just like I expect to have here with my players at USF. You know, I had very close relationships with the offensive players, especially the wide receivers. I'd recruited every single one of those guys, and so it definitely was an emotional week, but one that I think, you know, it was special to be able to know exactly when your last opportunity was to be with those guys, and you know they've kept up with what we're doing here at South Florida, so that's been really encouraging to get some texts and phone calls from those guys.
Beautiful. Okay, so fast forward to your experience here in Tampa. You're running around the city, eating all the foods you can, watching boats float by on the river. Talk about your experience with the Lightning. Obviously, that's a staple point in the city of Tampa. I personally hadn't been to any Lightning games, but I'd like to know what that experience was like for you.
Oh, it was incredible. I think it was, I really hadn't been here for 2 or 3 days, and I got an opportunity to go to the Lightning game. And it was my first NHL hockey game that I've ever been to in person. And so number one, just the arena was incredible. To hear that they had you know, over 210 sellouts in a row was incredible. I had the opportunity to meet Jeff Vinnick, the owner, and he was, just, very welcoming me to this Tampa Bay area and community, but just the pride that the Tampa Bay area has for their sports teams. And I was able to see that at the Lightning game. It was a very exciting game that actually was won at the very end. I had the opportunity to go down and to meet the coaching staff after the game and meet some of the players. And it was just a great way to kind of kick off my introduction to the Tampa area and to the sports scene.
You have thrown yourself into Tampa Bay culture, and you have to go to Gasparilla to do that. You experienced that as well. Tell us about that experience through Savannah's eyes, through your daughter's eyes. What did she say about that experience?
Yeah, that was incredible. I had heard about the Gasparilla Parade from my father, who was born in Arcadia, not too far away. And so whenever we knew we were coming to Tampa, he was telling me about this event. But just hearing about it and actually getting to experience it are two different things. Number one, just the passion of the people in this community to be able to see, that many people come out, and they were very supportive. I saw thousands and thousands of people that were given the Bulls sign. I don't know if they were just wanting beads from me or if they really were USF Bulls. But I think that hopefully we gained some new fans out of that. But Savannah, it was incredible for her. She's actually been in 2 national championship parades at Clemson. But really nothing to the size of this. But I thought early on that she would just kind of go around and wave, but once she saw that we were passing out beads, she had to throw beads. So I spent half my time holding on to her back so she didn't fall out of the Jeep while I was still trying to toss some beads. So it was a lot of fun, and it just got me excited thinking about the passion that is here in this community and the potential that we have at Raymond James. There's no question that this is a passionate community that when we put a product on the field that everybody believes in, that they're going to come back and they're going to support our Bulls. And I already have a vision of what that looks like, and I'm excited to see that coming up here next fall.
There's no secret to what you guys did over at Clemson during your tenure, during your 12 years there. But there are some things about the city of Tampa Bay that you just won't find over in Rock Hill. Talk about those things and what you feel that Tampa brings that gives a competitive edge over other places in the country, not just from a playing standpoint, but you talk about players' morale in terms of being here year-round, even if they're from out of state or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, well, I think it's a huge advantage, and obviously I've come down to the Tampa area from Clemson recruiting, but really the first time recruiting from Tampa, I rode up to Lake City and it was 2.5 hours, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how close we are. And then I came back, and the next day I drove down towards Miami, and it took us about 2.5, 3 hours to get down there. And then I realized, I said, you know what, we are in a great spot right here in Florida. Even we have a better advantage than some of the other college universities in our state just because of our central location. And so we can reach north and south of Florida, and then obviously in central Florida with all the players here. So the location, number one, is huge. But, absolutely everything that the Tampa Bay area brings. I mean, obviously you got the beaches that are very close by, and the weather that we get. I mean, that's something I'm really excited about. I mean, it's unbelievable in January and February. We've got some 75 and 80 degrees, days out there. That's incredible. And then also just the entertainment, a lot of things to do, and the restaurants and just the different venues that are, being at Clemson is a very special place, very unique. It's really very centrally located around the university and the football stadium and those type of things. And obviously, we had a lot of success recruiting there, and they will continue to do that. But for me, I felt like I was leaving home for the first time and kind of going to a new area, and maybe just looking at it from a recruiting coach's eyes. I just saw a lot of potential in the different venues and different places that we're going to be able to take these recruits and show them all the great things about this area.
Coach, it's a big day, press conference later on, another big event tonight. Really appreciate you finding the time to spend some time with us on this show. Congratulations on a great recruiting class. We're looking forward to the future.
Well, thank you. It's great. It's a great day to be a Bull, and I know this is a day we'll look back, 2-3 years from now, and some of these, a good number of these young men that we're signing today will be some of our key members of our team that's leading us to championship seasons.
Head coach Jeff Scott, stay with us. We're coming back with more on National Signing Day 2020. Back after this.
Jeff Scott, I think, is a rising star in the profession, really a talented coach, but really a great people person.
And I think the bonds that he's built with receiver cores, guys like Higgins and Watkins and all those guys run so deep that it's very obvious that these guys will run through a wall for him. And I think that part of the reason Clemson has been so good is because guys like Jeff have been able to milk the most out of all this talent.
He can form relationships with just about anybody. He can talk to anybody. The great thing with him going to USF, because he's been recruiting those areas, so it's going to be a pretty natural transition for him.
I think it's kind of the perfect match of job and coach. I mean, when you look at what he's built at Clemson, when you look at his background, when you look at his ties to the state, I've long thought, and I think you guys would agree, that USF has been a sleeping giant. And so when you get a guy who's been at the Power 5 level, who's been at the playoff 5 straight years, I think it has the potential to be a home run.
He's very genuine. He's going to get the best out of your son. He's always going to love on him and care for him. And, if he needs anything, he's always there for him. He means well. And, he's definitely one of the best coaches I've ever had.
He's a worker. This guy's relentless about team and getting better. He's always pushing his position group and the guys around him to really just focus on the task at hand and get better every day.
I look at Jeff and I see a guy that's a very good organizer, a guy that understands offense, a guy that understands game day. It's a home run hire, absolutely.
One of the things about Jeff Scott is that he's established himself as one of the best assistant coaches in college football over the last decade. He's also established himself as one of the best people. He's been very patient. He's had a lot of different opportunities. He's waited for the right one, and I think it's a perfect match.
First of all, brilliant leader who is, I just asked him earlier actually, what he's going to take from Clemson to South Florida from Dabo. And it is not hiring great coaches first, it's hiring great men first. It is loving those players first. And that's how you lead, and that's who Jeff is. His priority scale is perfect. He is a brilliant offensive mind, and he's going to carry that former walk-on chip on his shoulder that Dabo carries too, every single day. He is the perfect hire down there. And I've been around that man a lot over the past 5 or 6 years with all the time I've spent at Clemson. He's a coach's son. He walked on. He built WRU at Clemson. Think of who he's coached, man. DeAndre Hopkins, Martavis Bryant, Sammy Watkins, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, all these T. Higgins, all these Justin Ross. It's big time after big time after big time, but that's not how they started. They started with a lot of people that didn't believe in them when Dabo got elevated. Look what they built. Obviously, I can't speak highly enough about the man. He's an amazing hire.
Our coverage of National Signing Day 2020 continues with defensive coordinator Glenn Spencer. Coach, thanks for joining us. Belated welcome to USF. I know you've been in the trenches for a while, but our first chance to visit. You've got some intriguing players coming in. We'll talk about this class in a moment, but let's talk defense first. Tell us your philosophy, what you want this Bulls defense to look like this upcoming season.
First of all, excited to be here. Just great opportunity. I've just admired the program from afar and just have always seen what kind of good athletes you can get in this part of the country, and just potential is unbelievable. Just the response that we've gotten for the last 2 weeks, being on the road and getting interest from our junior day, the type of kids we got here, it was impressive. So This place has got a great name, and I'm really going to look forward to recruiting year after year here. Philosophy of defense. If you tried to pin me down to one thing, it'd be troublesome. It's pretty multiple, and that's by design. I think this day and time, if you get locked into something, offenses are so good, skill all over the field, quarterbacks that can get the ball out. I think if you get locked into one thing, you'll get drilled. So I think my success I've had over the years has been just a multiplicity, maybe for looks, but for the kids, simple for them. And there's a fine line there of how much you can do and still give an offense different looks and be sound in what you do. You pressure when it's available and when you feel like you can get there. Again, trying to be off balance with your self-scout is what offenses are seeing you do per down and distance. I've been doing it a long time, and there's no secret sauce to this thing. It's recruiting great players and getting them to play with a passion. And that's kind of what I've built my philosophy on, is just hopefully when people see defenses that I've coached in the past, they look at those defenses and say, wow, those guys are playing like their hair's on fire.
You talk about playing with the hair on fire, and you talk about the history and what you've admired from USF from afar. Obviously, being a part of a great tradition on defense is something that I guess one could admire. Is that something that excited you? I mean, you take a look at what's happened here at the last 15 years, and fortunately, I've been able to be a part of some good defensive stretches, but USF is always in the conversation for sacks and tackles for a loss when you talk about where you're ranked in the country. But again, is that something that excited you about taking this job when you look at the players you're able to bring in conjunction with the historic success USF has had on defense?
It is, and in particular, in my situation, you're sitting there with the situation to have a choice. It's always nice to have a choice where you're going to go to work. And when I was looking at 2 or 3 different options that I had, you always want to say, all right, I have a chance to go in there and win. So you have an option like that, then you're like, well, we go there, talent-wise, can we get it? And then maybe bringing in my philosophy of what I've done over the past few years with turnovers, of negative plays like you mentioned. That goes hand in hand with the type of athletes that you can get. The league is tough. The league's competitive. There's very multiple, powerful offenses. We played one of them, a couple of them last year when I was at Florida Atlantic. So I understand the challenges. And then you just see the potential for improvement. You go into a place and you say, well, maybe for whatever reason, they've underachieved on that side of the ball. And how you can improve them statistically. Bottom line is we have to do it. We have to do it to win a game. And after that, kind of everything else is good for talk, good for the radio and the coffee shop talk. But did you do enough that afternoon to win the game? And that's kind of been what I've prided myself on over the years. Whether you have to go out there and play 18 series in a game and defend 95 or 100 snaps like I was doing in the Big 12, or is it slowed down and you just maybe only have 11 or 12 possessions to defend? What did you do each time you trotted out on the field to get the ball back for your offense?
Let's talk a little bit about this class coming in. It's easy to notice that in the first group of 9 in December, you had 4 defensive secondary players there, so obviously that was a spot of emphasis. But tell us about some of the young men coming in on the defensive side of the ball that you think can help.
Well, obviously, first of all, I think the previous staff did a nice job recruiting that first signing day. I've probably had the advantage, too, of coming from the other side of the state, being in this recruiting area, of knowing some of these kids that from Florida Atlantic we identified, and even kids that we wanted, but we could not get. So right off the bat, when I took the job and saw the early signees, I was like, yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I liked him a lot. He can play. So there was some familiarity there that maybe you wouldn't have had if I'd have come from a different part of the country. So that's nice. That's a good advantage to have. So go back to the defensive backfield. Got a couple nice corners. Got a cover safety, which you need in my scheme, and got more of a physical safety, which you need in my scheme, and got some size at one cornerback and some real athleticism at the other cornerback. So I think between those guys, between Ben Knox and AJ, as far as those two corners, really fit in well. Can kind of look at the future. What are we going to be like after we lose a few corners this year, right? So I believe the previous staff identified, all right, you're going to lose them. Let's go ahead and get in some corners in this young class to develop. So this will be a huge year for them. With Mac Harris at a safety position, which in my scheme, the free safety, and then there's a star, which is a hybrid defender, which they never have recruited that position here in the past. When I was the school I was at last year, I identified Mac as that was that guy that I wanted for that position. And then we had another safety that's more of the cover safety in that group too, that again, addressed the need, I guess you could say. So real happy with that.
The first thing I see when I take a look at these guys is length. You talk about 3 of the defensive backs are over 6 feet, and it looks like some of the corners are at least 6'2". Then you got a linebacker outside guy who may play Will or Sam for you, who knows, but 6'1", and then you got a defensive lineman at 6'4". How important, I know it's such a small thing when you talk about actually getting it done on the field, but how important is length and size important to you when it comes to recruiting a guy?
Obviously, there's measurables for a reason. And a coach I was with a long time ago said, if you recruit, if you don't recruit length, if you don't recruit potential to get big, you're going to have a small team one day, and that's not good. Now, every now and then, there's such a dynamic kid that you'll give up a couple of inches because you turn on the film and this guy can run and hit and he runs through people, and this amount doesn't matter. It's amazing what this amount will do when you're saying yes and no to a kid.
Right.
We try to overthink this sometimes. Does the kid love football? Does he run to the ball? Does he play with passion? And is he violent when he gets there? So ideally, that's what I want to see first. Then after that, you say, all right, out of that pool, who's got the length? Who's got the potential to be that 6'3", 6'4", 280-pound 5 technique defensive end as opposed to the 6 foot 6'1". So I don't have really an overall say he's got to be this, he's got to be that. I want a young man that can run and hits, and he's violent, and he causes turnovers if you have a lot of guys that do that. But yes, the length is good, especially you get down to red zone, the corners, and you can get a 6'3" corner. You'd love to have those, but if it's a 5'10" corner that can jump just as high as a 6'3", what does it matter? So.
Coach, thanks for taking time for us. I know it's a busy day. We'll look forward to visiting with you a lot in the future.
I appreciate you having me.
Defensive coordinator Glenn Spencer, stay with us. We're going to talk some offense when we come back as National Signing Day 2020 continues.
Well, I think it says a lot about South Florida that, this guy had been up for a lot of jobs, and he chose, quote unquote, South Florida. That says a lot. It says a lot about the ability to recruit, the ability to win, and everything else. He is starting his career as a head coach. I think it's obvious the recruiting base there, the conference, the resources that is put into the program. Yeah, I think absolutely he can win. The offense and what he's done and the quarterbacks and the production speaks for itself. He will draw, top quarterbacks to South Florida because of his reputation and ability to develop guys. I don't have to tell you about Trevor or some of the guys you've had there. So he will get players to South Florida maybe that South Florida didn't look at South Florida before, if that makes sense.
Well, I think he's had a great deal of experience seeing how elite programs are run. Obviously, he's grown up in the sport, and I think he understands, the components it takes to build a successful program. There are a lot of guys who can build successful teams, but he's had experience in developing a program. And he's been there from the ground floor when Dabo sort of transformed Clemson, and I'm sure he's going to put his own spin on it, but just having that experience and then knowing what your philosophy is and being able to implement it, I think will be really important for him. And I think the thing that strikes me about him, he's a very genuine guy. Authenticity shines through when it comes time to recruiting. Kids know when you're just trying to sell them on something, and I think that he has a way, or hopefully has a way, his demeanor when I've been around him is such that you get the impression that he believes what he's telling you.
Welcome back. National Signing Day coverage 2020. We move to the offensive side of the ball now. By the way, if you're just joining us, 8 new Bulls this morning. That brings the overall class to 17. We had a chance to talk defense with our defensive coordinator, Glenn Spencer. Now we move to offense and offensive coordinator, Charlie Weiss Jr. Coach, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me on here. Fired up.
We got a lot to cover. Let's talk
Great.
a little bit about you first as a very youthful coordinator.
Yes, sir.
And your second spot as a coordinator. So you've got a great amount of experience at a young age, obviously football family. It's
Right.
always been your life. Tell us a little bit about your offensive philosophy. When this thing is clicking on the offensive side of the ball for USF, what are the Bulls going to look like?
For sure. I think, the number one thing that we're going to talk about is tempo, first and foremost. We're going to be a fast-paced offense. So that's a thing that we don't just, we don't just preach it and say it. We do a lot of things to teach that. Some different things that we teach the players, how to get the ball spotted faster, how to get the signal fast, and you obviously got to call plays fast when you're a tempo offense too. So that's one of the number one things that we'll get onto. Secondly, we want to be explosive. So we do want to be a balanced offense. We want to be able to run the ball and throw it. And I always kind of talk about you should structure your offense around what you got. At FAU, the 2 years that I was there, the first year we were much more run heavy. We had 2 running backs that were drafted, one in the 3rd and one in the 7th. Devin Singletary plays for the Buffalo Bills. Was a tremendous player, so hey, let's not overthink it. We got to really get back. Let's find different ways to run the football. And then this past season, our quarterback really stepped up and had a really big-time tight end and threw the ball a little bit more. So regardless of what will be more dominant, that's yet to be seen, depending on our personnel and as we go through spring ball and fall camp. But we're going to find a way to be explosive and generate big plays. It's one of the number one statistics in football, along with turnovers. So those couple things that we did well is playing fast, explosive, and then taking care of the football would be the third thing. And those are kind of the top things that are going to get wins and losses.
You talk about the term tempo, and it kind of makes me think of the term 12th man when you're talking football.
For sure.
You got places in the NFL, they talk about 12th man because it's just so loud. And although it's not a 12th guy playing on the field, that factor that noise brings to the game, it's an obstacle for the opposing team. Do you feel that tempo, when a team can live by it and die by it and execute with tempo, do you feel like that serves as a 12th man in college football?
Certainly. I mean, it's an equalizer. It's just a way to make the defense play on their heels, not know exactly what's going on, and it's ways to make a linebacker misfit a gap because it's play 30 of the first quarter. He's a little bit tired. There's an orbit motion coming right here. The tight end sliding back across. There's a lot going on, and you're doing it at a fast pace. There's a lot going on for that guy right there compared to if you're slow, just getting lined up. They're seeing what's going on. They're able to look at the backfield. They're seeing the quarterback. Where's the running back at? Where's the tight end? Okay, the slot's in a tight split. I'm probably seeing motion right here. So instead of letting them see all those things, hey, let's go play fast, not let them get lined up and take advantage of that. Now, there's certain times where you need to slow it down, and you're not just going to do it just to do it. But you got to find those places where you're going to get the defense on their heels that way.
Coach, you had to build some depth in the quarterback room. You probably had to build some competition there too.
Certainly.
You got 3 guys coming in this class. Tell us a little bit about the incoming players and what a quarterback needs to do in your scheme to succeed.
Yeah, I think the number one thing is protecting the football. If you don't turn the ball over, take care of the football and manage the offense, that's the number one thing that you have to do. And so, when we go about looking for players, that's probably the top thing is this guy a smart kid who's going to be able to learn the system, take care of the football, make the protection calls, get the calls in fast, execute the system the way that we want it to be executed and not just freelance and do his own thing. And so we brought in 3 guys who are all very capable of that. Cade, the transfer from North Carolina, is a guy who's, a great person, comes from a great family, really intellectual kid. He's wanted to bang on my door and meet every second that he can, and that's what you love from a quarterback. And on top of it, he can make every single throw. He has the ability to throw that field out route all the way, from the far hash. But at the same time, he's a smart kid. He gets it all, and he can run too. He's physical. He's got some weight on him, and that's another element that's fun to use when you have a quarterback that can do it. It's always tough for a defense, similar to Tempo. It's another guy that you got to account for. And then the two high school kids we have coming in, Jordan Smith and Travis Marsh, are both also talented athletic players. Jordan was committed for a long time, really fired up about him and his athletic ability, things he can do. Lefty who can sling it, throw the ball all over the yard too. Once again, another good kid, comes from a good family, kind of born and raised a Bulls fan, so that's kind of cool that he gets to be here. And then Trey is a guy I had my eyes on at FAU. He was committed to another school for a long time, so couldn't get in the game here, and then kind of just played out, and that we could recruit him at South Florida. Now he's a kid that's a taller, long guy, can make every throw, extremely talented arm strength, and keep developing him as a passer, working on his footwork and some other things. But he's got all the ability in the world, and could be a star. So both those guys we're fired up about, and Cade will bring immediate help there.
Now, people might mention your age in terms of being a coordinator.
Right.
But do you feel you might recruit better than some of these older coaches because you might be more in touch with the younger guys?
I think it can certainly help in some ways. Play Madden against both of them, both those high school commits. I beat one, lost the other. I'm not going to put it out there who was which.
Right.
But that was pretty cool, do things like that. And there's, a lot of similar things. Listen to the same music, do some of the same stuff because, I am at a younger age and all that. But it is a good way there. But I always tell them, hey, you don't have to worry about it. I've been doing this since I was a little kid, growing up on the sidelines with my dad.
We've centered on this show because of the nature of today on new players coming in, and we don't want to not pay attention to the returnees. As you have analyzed this team, looking at tape from last year on the offensive side of the ball and looking at the returnees, what are your impressions? What are the strengths? What are the areas that you may want to tinker with?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of things that still remain to be seen as we get into spring football, but I am encouraged looking at the tape. I think there are a few skill players on the roster that are dynamic, and they're closers, and closers are guys that I call that, hey, it's inside zone, they're taking a 5-yard run 50, so we need those kinds of guys on the roster. I think we have a few of them, which is encouraging. Obviously, we're adding a bunch of those today. So from that standpoint, it's good. There's a few linemen that I'm really fired up about and think have some really good ability. And obviously, we're going to continue to go through spring ball and evaluate players across all positions and see what we need to add in.
You haven't been here long, but in your time here, what do you appreciate most about this atmosphere? Obviously, you guys have just finished a pretty integral part of the offseason in terms of closing out signing day. What have you appreciated most at this point in time?
I think the fan support has been tremendous, and seeing with Coach Scott being here and all the positive momentum going on, it's really cool just to see the following on Twitter and, all the interactions that you get through that. I think it's really encouraging to me that people are really excited about what's going on here, and I think we're going to, build a program that's going to sustain for a long time, and I'm just excited to see that support as we get into practices and spring game and into the season.
Coach, thanks.
Absolutely.
Have a great
Thank you,
first
guys.
season.
I
Appreciate you
appreciate
taking time.
Thank you.
Offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss Jr. That'll bring us to the close of today's show. Don't forget, Bulls fans, season ticket renewal deadline is February 7th. That's coming up. We are just about 2 months or so away from the spring game. It'll be here fast. Sam, great to be with you. Looking forward to another season on the radio. Thank you for joining us today, National Signing Day 2020. We'll visit again soon.